Hey everybody, it's Colin McEwen from the New Fly Fisher. Thanks for joining us. It's a beautiful Wednesday night. And tonight we're going to be talking about something really special, something really close to my heart, Labrador. I absolutely love this part of Canada. And I think one of the reasons I like it so much, it's one of the last places where there's been very little interaction with humanity and the landscape and the wildlife and everything else. It's how people in the United States like to think about Alaska. Well, this is our Alaska, and Labrador is absolutely gigantic. There's more bears than people, there's more caribou than people, and there's more salmon and trout than people, which is even better. But tonight what we're going to be talking about is a lodge I've been to twice now, and I went to it last year, and it's got a special place in my heart because it's a place for everyone, whether they're a new angler, they're new to fly fishing, because it's such an easy place to catch fish and not have to make huge casts. Or if you're a little bit older and you're worried about, weighting and accessibility, like this is the place. And the best thing is, it's just absolutely beautiful and the fishing's fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet the folks from Big River. We got Judy here, Judy Normand, who's the camp manager. We also have a guest who's been there a few times, who's going to tell us about his experience, about the flies at work. We got lots of video, lots of great fishing content. It's going to be a great show. Stay with us.
Ooh, that's a nice sized fish.
I will catch these all day.
That is what you're in for on this episode.
Well, welcome back, everyone. And I want to introduce you to, hey, Judy.
Hi there.
And you're in Corner Brook, are you not?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
I know it's a little bit later there, an hour and a half later. And thanks for joining us. And I'm also going to, Bob,
hey,
how are things in your beautiful part of the world?
Things are doing beautiful. We're just waiting for the Hendricksons to pop.
So you better explain to everyone where you're located, because you're down in the United States and eastern side of the U.S.
Yes, I'm 2 hours northwest of New York City. I'm very blessed to live on the banks of the Delaware River. So we are in very good trout country right here.
Outstanding. So for everyone that's watching, I've got to tell you that I've been very fortunate in my life to have gone to a lot of great lodges. And when I went to Big River, Bill Spicer from our show had already been there. And this is when the place had first opened. And I should explain that this was a private lodge. I mean, this wasn't a place that the public could go to. And it's been in existence for, 50 plus years. And you correct me if I'm wrong here, Judy. And it was always not open to the public. I mean, you had to be a member of this lodge. And then it changed ownership and opened up. And you did a lot of work. You built a new facility. I mean, there's been tremendous changes. And all throughout this whole period, the fishing's just as good as it always was. It's got great access. And you've actually opened up more parts of the river. You've got a special boat there, a jet boat to get downriver to go to places. I mean, everything about the place is fantastic, which is one of the reasons why, Bob, I've asked you to join us tonight, because you did all the research and all these different lodges to go to when you retired from being a teacher, and you said, I'm going to live the dream. I've always wanted to go to Labrador. What's the best place to go? And you were looking at, I won't name names, but all these different places. And this is how you and I met.
Yes.
Because we're both there at the same time. And you were like, hey, it's Colin McEwen from the New Fly Fisher. What are you doing here? I'm here living my dream. What are you doing here? I said, I'm living my dream too. So there we were at the dinner table.
Actually, Colin, by the time that Bob and I spoke, about 2 years, I think, prior to Bob actually coming to Big River. And he was so excited, so enthusiastic about the trip. And like you said, it was just bonus when you happened to be there when he arrived. But by the time Bob and I met, I already felt like I knew him, because we were talking for quite some time prior to his actual arriving to Big River. So it was wonderful.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm a solid middle class blue collar guy. That's my parents were railroad. My dad was a railroad conductor. My mom was a school bus driver, and I knew that this was going to be my one opportunity to really live my dream, to do what I wanted to do with Atlantic salmon fishing. I had been to other places and I'd caught salmon, but I wanted the best. And I did research. I researched Russia. I researched Iceland. I researched a lot of places. And it was actually in a conversation with Bill Spicer, who told me that he had 91 hookups in a week at Big River. And he said, I know that sounds absurd, but that's what I had. And he said, trust me, go with this place. You'll love every minute of it. And I didn't quite get to 91, but I got pretty close. So it was the wisest fishing investment that I've ever made in my entire life.
And now you've been there twice.
Been there twice, would have been 3 times, except for COVID.
Well, let's hope the border is going to open and
Yes.
all things will be great. And Judy, why don't you explain to everyone what your role is with this camp? Because you run a lot of different things for Big River. I mean, you also have hunting camps in Newfoundland and places like that. But what's your role at Big River?
Well, at Big River, I always like to be there when the guests arrive, and of course we have our regular. The guides are all there, the housekeeping crew, and when we're in at Big River, we're certainly a team effort there to make sure that everybody's expectations are met when it comes to being out on the river, or whether or not they're in at the lodge, all their meals, their accommodations, and just make sure that everything runs smoothly while they're there. And actually, everybody's pretty pleased by the time they're ready to leave on Friday, and they wish they had another week.
So Frederick's asking, Judy, where exactly is Big River relative? So I think most people know where Labrador is, and I think if you know where Goose Bay is, which is where you fly into, where is Big River relative to Goose Bay?
Goose Bay is approximately 120 miles northeast, or Big River is approximately 120 miles northeast of Goose Bay. So once you arrive in Goose Bay, you get the charter, which we've arranged. We take you to the Otter Creek, where we board the charter and fly the 50-minute flight into the lodge.
Well, speaking about the flight and speaking about all the things I mentioned before, but why I wanted to go to Labrador way back 20 years ago and still love going to Labrador, and why you went there, Bob, I'm going to play a little video here to show everybody a little bit about where we are, why Labrador is special, and also talk about a little bit about the fishing that is so fabulous. And there's a special person on camera whose name is Judy that does an excellent job.
Whenever
That's the wrong
I speak
button.
to anglers at fly fishing clubs or at trade shows, I'm always asked about Labrador, which of course leads to a discussion. What is so intriguing about this place for fly fishers? Could it be the raw, natural beauty of the landscape? The true remoteness of this land? Or perhaps the fact it is one of the last frontiers in the world that is virtually untouched by humanity. This is all certainly true and part of the magic formula that is unique to this destination. But then there is, of course, the fishing. Wild brook trout that reach epic proportions, sea-run Atlantic salmon that come up the rivers in the thousands. So many wonders for any angler to behold, which is why I asked Judy Normand, manager of Big River Lodge, to tell me more about what brings anglers to this very special place.
Well, you'll find that Big River is so remote. We're 120 miles northeast of Goose Bay, which actually puts it in a very truly wilderness area of Labrador. The fishing here is fantastic, easy wading. The river has lots of pools directly out in front of the lodge, which most of our clients really like. Others like the adventure of traveling up the river to another falls further up river. as well as at the mouth of the river. So there's a great opportunity for anglers, the novice angler, anglers who, the experienced anglers, I guess, also love Big River. We're the only lodge here, and it's truly a pristine area of Labrador. The travel alone into Big River is quite unique. The landscape, of course, flying into the lodge. Then you're overlooking the river. There's very few people, so you have, there's very low pressure on the river for fishing, which most everybody would appreciate. It's just a truly wilderness experience, overall experience to fish here at Big River. After all the challenges we've all faced, I think you deserve now to plan your next adventure to Big River camps, where you can fish directly in front of the lodge, avail of the great accommodations and the food here at the lodge, the great camaraderie, and just have that getaway that everybody needs after these past few months.
Well, you said it well there, Judy. Unfortunately, these past few months have become a year plus.
It has indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. But the good news is we're getting close. I believe the border is going to open soon. People are going to be able to come into Canada, and people across Canada, of course, can come to your place. You already have a lot of bookings from Canadians as well. And I think, Bob, before we started tonight, Bob raised a really good point. And that is the fact that your lodge, you've got guests who've been coming there 20 plus years. Like the one gent there, Bill, he's coming there 26 years. I mean, a lot of people have been coming a long time.
Yes, I think in 26 years, actually, Vince and Bill had just missed 1 year within that time frame. But they were the regulars, or some of the regulars at Big River. And also Bob from Ontario, he's 86 years old and can't wait to come back.
Which speaks to, obviously it's got to be a pretty special place. And I remember, Bob, you keyed into it when the first day we were there, and I'm going to put up some pictures of the lodge and the interior and stuff like that, and then we'll get into the important thing, which is the fishing, because I love having a great place to stay, nice food and all that, but I got to talk about the fishing. But Bob, you keyed in that first day, we're sitting around the table, and you were amazed by how many people at that table had been there 20 plus years. It was outstanding, wasn't it?
Yeah. It immediately made me know that I made the right decision, because I really did put a lot of work into trying to figure out, this is my one shot. This is where I'm going to invest in my dream. And when you sit down and you start talking to people who had been there 26 consecutive years, and by their count, they had 1 year where the fishing was slow, and that was because an iceberg jammed the mouth of the river. In all the other 25 years, the fishing was just absolutely phenomenal. And then to hear them sitting and talking about what their experiences have been like over the years, the salmon they had caught, the camaraderie they had built. When you think about fly fishing and you think about what's so great in fly fishing, it's so much more than just a place. It's a place plus everything the place brings with it. And in Labrador, you've got the remote nature of it, you've got the wilderness, and you've got tremendous people at Big River Lodge that just form strong bonds and strong connections. So I think I got the best of all the worlds when I went there.
Well, Bob, I've got a picture up here, and Judy, you can certainly explain it. So what we're seeing on the left-hand side is the new lodge that was built a few years ago, and the dark brown lodge or facility on the right, that's the original lodge that was built like 50 years ago. Obviously, it has updates and things like that, but have I got that right? That's the original lodge on the right?
Yes, that's correct. That was the original lodge that was built, and then we wanted to keep that lodge for nostalgic purposes, of course, and also did a lot of renovations, and it now houses the guides.
Well,
nice place for the guides.
There's one other fantastic
also,
thing about that room.
I should mention about the waiting room on the back of
Yes,
that.
that's the most important thing to mention.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful waiting room with a nice fireplace and, to dry out all your equipment once you come in off the river. And then the next day you just go out there in the morning again and get suited up for the river. And it's an
Nice
awesome.
warm footsies in your waders.
Exactly.
No cold, miserable, damp waders. It's
Right.
a great feeling.
It sure is.
I don't know what you're talking about, Bob. It's almost like you're saying it's almost like you're saying it rains there sometimes in Labrador. We had a great comment from Guide Life Newfoundland saying it's one of the best rivers in Labrador and Newfoundland. And I appreciate you saying that because like I said, I'm pretty fortunate. I've fished a lot of great rivers in both Newfoundland and Labrador, and this is definitely one of the top ones. And we should give people context about not where the river is so much, but about the river itself and how where you have the lodge is what, 2.5 miles from the ocean?
Yes. Well, actually, it's 5 miles.
Okay. But the key is where you are. This is the first set of pools, riffles, runs, everything that the fish are going to stop at. It's literally the first place on their migratory run up the river. And the river, I think, is what, 40 plus miles long, right? 45 miles. So it's a very long river, a lot of fast water up above. But this is the first holding places for the salmon on their migration up, which is fantastic. I mean, every time the tide came in, the guys would go looking at the watch. Yeah, about 30 minutes from now, it's going to light up, and boom, Bob, you remember that? We'd be all sitting there casting, nothing, and then everyone's got fish on.
Yeah,
it was insane.
The salmon look like dolphin in the middle of the ocean, just porpoising their way up the river. You see them coming. There's a fellow by the name of Graham Massey who makes hooks and sells hooks and everything. I see him at the fly shows, and I talked to him at one point. He said, "Oh, you're doing a slideshow on Big River?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I was there 15 years ago, 20 years ago." He goes, he's Scottish. He goes, "It's not fishing, it's catching."
Well, listen, I think this is a good point I'm going to play a video, and it's going to talk about the fishing that is literally right in front of the lodge. And it's so easy, waiting and accessible. And it's just, I took my daughter there, Jenna, for her first salmon fishing experience, and it was the best place. Let's watch this video and get a bit of context to help everyone understand how fantastic the fishing is there. How'd you like that music? I thought I was at a rave. But I guess we were at a rave. It was a salmon rave. Oh, hang on, Bob. I think you're muted. There you go. Go ahead.
As I listened to your introduction, you mentioned context, and I think context is really important for people to understand here. I've noticed a few of the comments from people who know about Labrador and confirming what it is that's being presented about how good the fishing is. But from a guy who had not been to Labrador and was wondering about the differences, what makes Labrador so special, I've been to Gaspé a couple of times, and I did catch fish, and we averaged about 1 fish a day. So if I fished for 3 days, I would catch 3 fish. But in Labrador, if you remember, Colin, I don't remember if you were looking at the moment or not, but you invited me to join you and the new fly fisher guys downriver a little bit, and I caught 3 fish on 4 casts. Now, I don't think there's any other place in the world. And speaking to professional biologists, they told me that Big River has the highest catch rates for Atlantic salmon in the world, greater than Iceland, greater than the Pinoy. That was statistically shown. And where else in the world can you go that you can catch 3 fish on 4 casts? That's mind-blowing to me, but I did it.
Yep. It's a pretty special place. And, there was a question asked. That's kind of connected to what we're talking about. Frederick was asking, how old is the lodge? And how long has it been up?
The original lodge was the late 1960s.
Right. And then when was the new lodge built?
We started the new lodge in 2013-14. And then we kind of opened. We weren't quite finished the lodge, actually, the first year that we had a few guests there. But from then on, we've had the lodge all completed.
Okay.
And also, Judy, if I remember right, the lodge now accommodates a lot more people than the old lodge, so people can get in and really get great weeks of fishing booked to come in.
It does. That's correct, Bob. And again, we still keep our numbers low. We don't want to, to overpower everything in there. People this is their getaway. So we want it to be quite relaxed and have some great fishing. And again, there's no pool pressure. The only people you see are the ones you fly in and out with.
Yep.
And, I'm putting up some pictures here. I want to mention that, if anybody or anybody that's watching this and they're fairly new, my daughter had never Atlantic salmon fished. And for her, we were still at that. She was catching bass. She'd done a little brook trout fishing, but she wasn't at that point she could make hero casts. She couldn't throw a full line. She couldn't full half a line. She was doing 2 rod lengths, 3 rod lengths. And you know something? She caught lots of fish, like literally. And I put that video clip, and you might have noticed, some of those casts she made, they were literally 2 rod lengths, just up, down, swinging a fly, boom, into a fish. So that to me, that's fantastic. And as a dad, of course, I know places I've been where it's really kind of treacherous. The water's fast, it's dangerous, all these things. I didn't worry about my daughter there. I'm not trying to say she's a bit of a shit magnet, but she's a bit of a shit magnet. and if she's watching this, I'm sorry, Jenna, but the truth hurts.
You mentioned that, Colin, and actually last year we had a mother, her son, and the grandson come to Big River, and the grandson caught his very first Atlantic salmon.
Nice.
And I don't know who was prouder, out of the 3 of them. It was, it was beautiful. And it was such a pleasure having them. So, again, at Big River, there's individuals, couples, families, corporate groups. We can accommodate. If there's something that you're planning, we can make it happen.
Well, just so you know, I've actually I think I was there when the mother and her son and the grandson were there, because I've got her talking about how important it is to get your son out fishing, because that way he'll get his son out or his daughter. It doesn't matter. Like, you see my daughter out fishing. And I remember, Bob, you were really thrilled to see that I brought my daughter to Labrador to go fishing. And I try to take her out a lot. It's our father-daughter time. So it's real important to me.
Well, as someone who taught for a living and literally knows thousands of young adults through their growing, I think that when you spend time fishing and, just spending time together outside of where the world can kind of drive people apart, I think the fishing tends to bring them together and reinforce those bonds that are the most important things that we can get out of life.
Yeah. Well, very well said. So look, why don't we, I'm going to jump into the next video, because this next video is going to talk a little bit about, so we've talked about in front of the lodge, but let's talk about the other parts of the river, because you can go upriver, you can go downriver. There's some people never leave in front of the lodge because they don't need to, because the fishing's so good. But I want to show some of the experiences we had in different parts of the river in this next video, and then we'll talk about it.
One of the reasons Big River Lodge is so special is the variety of fishing available. This morning, we decided to head downriver by jet boat to an area where the river and the sea meet. There are some small streams that run out into tidal waters. This area is known for holding lots of active sea-run brook trout. Just as I remembered, the topwater action for these brook trout was absolutely epic. Despite the fact our main goal was to catch some wild brook trout, fishing is always full of surprises, like hooking into a gorgeous salmon. This was an epic fight, as I was only fishing with a 6-weight rod and 4X tippet geared for brook trout.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Oh, sorry. Your mic's, go ahead, say, Bob.
That's an incredible fish. In all honesty, that might be like, that's one of the top fish I think you'll ever catch given those circumstances. That's really amazing.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky to have landed that fish with the setup I had, a 10-pounder. And but that's one of the surprises you get. You're sitting there, and we saw it with the underwater camera. some very big brook trout. I had 3 salmon sitting there, and they were 7 to 8 pounds, and there was a brook trout as large as the salmon that went right underneath them, swimming with them. So there's some very big brook trout, and Judy, you know this better than any of us, how many 4, 5, 6 pounders, but you're going to catch tons of the smaller 16, 18, 19 inchers when you're fishing, whether it's on the main river or the little side streams.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just see a question there asking, is it mainly grills? No, the ratio is 50 to 50, basically, what we're seeing there.
And I can put some pictures up here because you got some big ones the last time you were there, right, Bob?
Yeah. Yeah. I think as far as grills goes, I think it's like a lot of rivers. The later in the season you get, the higher the percentage of grills.
So that would be one of your average fish, I would say.
Yeah. That's typical, but we've gotten them bigger. And I had one that was about 20 pounds or so right at the net that unfortunately slipped out of the net, but that's why we keep coming back. So
yeah, there's one there. And my friend Ray, he caught a couple monsters when he came in there the week after I did. But in general, and here's a nice shot of one underwater. I mean, there's so many fish. You just don't know. It's like, I don't know, what's that old thing from Forrest Gump? It's like a box of chocolates. Every time you make a cast, you don't know what's going to happen. There's just so many fish.
Of course, the beauty too. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
One of the things that I believe about Big River, and Colin, you can verify or correct me on this, but I've been to maybe 4 different, rivers. I've been to about 7 or 8 different rivers of salmon rivers in my life fishing. And what I feel about Big River fish is that they're significantly more aggressive than fish in the other rivers I've been to. And I think a large part of that has to do with something you mentioned before about the proximity to the salt, and that the fish aren't in hunkered down mode quite when they first get there. And they're very aggressive. And you'll often see them like marlin with their fin out of the water, chasing your fly down, or like a brown trout coming up and smacking at your fly on the surface. It's really remarkable how aggressive the fish in the river are.
Yeah.
And that's what I was mentioning about, because we're just 5 miles up from the mouth of the river. The fish are so fresh that a lot of them still have the sea lice on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Very acrobatic.
Yeah, that's what I liked. And we're going to talk about the flies here in a few minutes, and we're using small flies. Like, we're not using big flies. So
no, 6s and 8s.
Yeah. At the most, I know Mitch had me using 10s and 12s sometimes. Wow. It's based on the water conditions and everything. So Paul, who's 50, fishing all his life with bait casters, and just so you know, Paul, I was, I think, 40 when I made my switch, and it was a progression going from spin fishing to fly. And I still pick up a spinning rod every once in a while, depending upon the circumstances, but I got so addicted to fly fishing. So if you were wanting to take a destination trip, this would be a good place to go, again, because for beginners, you don't have to make huge casts. It's not really technical fishing. It's like the Delaware River. Bob, you're right there, and it can be pretty challenging fishing. I've never fished it, but friends who've gone there, they tell me it can be challenging. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And to reinforce what you were saying, my guide Humphreys, he corrected me. He said, you cast too far on this river. He said, do not cast like that. Bring it in 30 to 40 feet. That's it. No more.
That's perfect. That's a cool thing you were talking about, Humphrey. We were saying earlier, Judy, and we mentioned it a bit, but you've got some guides that have been there for an awful long time. In fact, you have a guide there when I was there a few years ago who is celebrating his 50th year of guiding at the lodge. Like, there's not too many places that have guides for 50 years.
No. Loman can pretty much tell you where every rock is on that river.
He can.
Yeah.
If he's like me, he's probably hit at every one of those rocks with a boat or a motor.
Yeah, he's been there over 50 years now. And he's part of the history and part of the furniture there, that's for sure.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, Humphrey's been there over 20 years, I think about 24, 25 years. And, and all the knowledge that these older guides have, and they're passing along to guides that have been there, you know, for 5 and 6 years is wonderful.
Well, you know, since we've probably got some people who are watching this right now that are fairly new to fly fishing, you might be in the first year, second year, third year, and I don't want this to seem overwhelming. Why don't we go into talking a little bit about the technical aspects of the fishing, because it's not really that complicated. And I try to explain this in the next couple of video clips. The first part here, we're going to talk about the fishing, and we're going to talk about the flies, because the flies, I mean, I love the flies that we use for Atlantic salmon fishing because they're so beautiful. But why don't we show this video clip, and then we'll go. Bob, I want you to talk. I mean, you're the fly tire. My flies look like roadkill. You're the fly tire, and you can explain the flies better than I can, and we'll go through some of the pictures. But first, let's have a look at this video, and then we'll come back.
We'll take a few steps down.
Okay. 1, 2 here.
So it'll be all right, yeah. We can.
And then you just lengthen the leader or lengthen your cast each time.
Yeah.
Just
like you're
make
doing
sure you
45
cover.
degrees.
Okay.
And it'll come right on around.
But the key is what we're trying to do is systematically cover this whole.
Yes, cover as much water as possible.
And my
Cover
understanding.
this. There's a hole going right on down.
Okay. And my understanding is that, like, the salmon won't necessarily move that far. I've got to put it in their window.
Yeah, right in their face, pretty much.
They're not chasing. And then what we're looking for, and I see you following my fly, you're looking to see a rise or a flash or something that tells you that I've moved a fish, right?
Yes.
You know, one of the great things about Big River and why I like coming here is it has a lot of runs and pools. Great places where you can have lots of water with fish, and you don't have to share it. A lot of lodges you go to, they don't have a lot of water, or they have 2, 3, 4 pools, maybe a half dozen. Here, they have a lot. And it goes all the way from in front of the lodge up the river. You know, one of the things I really like about this type of Atlantic salmon fishing, it's not complicated. I mean, the setup is so simple. I'm using a 7-weight to a 9-weight rod with a floating line. And for a leader, most of them are 8 to 10 feet, and they're not tapered. In fact, you don't want tapered, and you certainly do not want a knotted one that's built. What you want is just a straight piece of mono. I'm using 8-pound test, stiff, casts this fly very easily and out into the current. But the big thing is you don't want the knots, because in this fast water, it actually causes resistance and will pull your fly down when you're trying to riffle it across the top. Or if you're throwing out a bomber, it causes other grief. They have found that just a straight piece of mono is all you need in an 8 to 10 foot length. I love Atlantic salmon flies because they're so beautiful and they're so varied. Here at Big River, most of the time, you're going to need 2 varieties. One is going to be a bomber or bug, if the conditions are right for topwater, and the other one is a wet fly. The wet flies they use here are generally small. They're going to be sizes in 8 to 10, sometimes even 12 if it's later in the season and the water gets low. All right. So, keep the thing I can tell you is that a 7, 8, or 9-weight rod are ideal for there. A floating line and a straight piece of 8 to 12 foot piece of mono, and that's it. That's it. Nothing complicated. No, leaders that are built with a certain math, and you got to present them a certain way. You're going to cast 45 degrees, and we'll talk about this in another video clip, across, and the guide will give you instruction, but it's really dead easy to get a fly swung through there. Would you not agree, Bob?
Absolutely. In fact, we used to say in a lot of things that we've done in life, the KISS philosophy: keep it simple, stupid. And that is it. I know that's the thing Humphreys had to drill into me. 2 things: keep it simple and learn how to track your fly. If you can do that, you're into fish.
So, Bob, what would you say? I'm going to put up the first fly here. We'll do a topwater fly. And this is one I really liked, and I used in other rivers. And that's this one.
It's a bumblebee bomber. The only reason I tied it is because Judy mentioned that the guys were having a lot of success with it. I don't fish a lot of bombers up there, but I know people who do, and they definitely catch fish. I just like the riffle hitch fly a little bit more, but this is one of the most productive variations of the bomber that the guides prefer on the river.
Right. Okay. And then when we go to wet flies, I mean, everyone has to have this in their box.
This is a really neat fly, and I'm glad that you said everybody has to have it. The technical name of this fly is a riffle blue charm or a blue charm riffle. And I only came across it because I was reading the book I think Paul Mariner wrote about salmon flies and their histories. And there was a little blurb about how effective this was, particularly in Labrador. So I tied maybe a dozen of them. And the first year that I went up there, this was the most fish producing fly that I carried. In fact, I mentioned before that I took the 3 fish on the 4 casts, and this was the fly that I did it with.
Great. Now here's another pattern that I associate with the Rusty Goose River in New Brunswick, but I know it works really well.
You know, it's funny. Yes, it's not famous as a Labrador pattern at all. It's a silver rat. And it happens to be a pattern I love to tie that I think is beautiful. And I learned how to tie salmon flies from Warren Duncan, who's a legend in salmon fly tying. And I just wanted to fish a fly that would kind of, in a way, connect me to Warren and make me feel, you know, Warren's passed on now, and give me this sort of sense of nostalgia. So I took this out and I caught fish with it.
Yep, great fly. And also known as the Rusty Rat. That's the other variation of it, right?
Yeah, it's a variation, exactly.
Here's a great pattern. I got to tell you, I've caught fish with this everywhere in the Maritimes in Newfoundland and Labrador.
This pattern makes me laugh because, you know, Humphreys is my guide. And of course, you tip your guide. That's a natural thing to do. But one of the things Humphreys expects is at the end of the trip, he opens up my fly box and takes all my Undertakers. So over the 2 years combined that I have fished there, this pattern has been the best pattern.
Outstanding. And here's an old favorite too.
I have an interesting story about this one. The second year that I went up, it was just Humphreys and I, and Humphreys and I have become friends. So only with, and I want to be clear about this, only with my begging him to do this, because I also love to take pictures when I go. Humphreys reluctantly picked up his rod, and I said, all right, let's fish together. So we go fishing together, and he fishes this particular pattern, which is called a white wing thunder and lightning. And he started catching some fish, and I got all the pictures I wanted. So I decided to start fishing, and I was using an Undertaker, and I could not catch a fish. And by the end of the morning, Humphreys had 7 or 8 fish landed, and I didn't take any. So then we had lunch together, and he said, listen, let's switch flies. I said, okay, good idea. So we switched flies, and in the afternoon, I caught 4 fish, and Humphreys caught none. And the only difference was who was using the white wing thunder and lightning. So I usually don't think pattern's a huge deal, but I will never be without this fly again as long as I live.
Good advice. And then here's one a lot of people, I saw this on the Margarita River years ago in both orange and yellow as well as white, and it works.
Yes, and I've used it in Gaspé and caught fish. And I also used it, there's an old lodge that I know Big River's looking, on Big River's property, that they're looking to renovate. And on the waters right outside that lodge, I did some really nice salmon on this fly. So the thing that is it's got a deer hair head, so it's going to ride the surface and push a little more water than your typical riffle-hitched hairwing salmon fly. So it's kind of like a green machine, but a little bit bigger, and you get that extra push of the water with the deer hair head. So very, very, very productive pattern. And I know in speaking to the guides, they really like the color white.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Bob. The only pattern I would add to what you had that we went through would be black bear green butt, worked well. Mm-hmm. And one I call the glitter bug, but the politically incorrect name for it is a green ass bug. And it works pretty well. It's kind of my secret weapon. Now, what's something I want to mention? Oh, can the lodge supply equipment? Judy, you want to answer that?
Sure. We don't carry, a lot of extra equipment, but we do carry some. So if there's anybody that books with us, be sure to mention up front what you're looking for, what you need, and we can certainly accommodate that.
Yeah,
There's an additional charge for that, of course, but it's certainly available.
Okay. And I want to mention for anybody watching this that likes spay fishing or switch rod fishing, this is the river to do it. Holy mackerel. There's so many good spots to use a two-handed rod and really punch a fly out there. Wouldn't you say, Bob?
One of the things, spay fishing is something that I've gotten into the last 4 or 5 years. I have some friends who are amazing at it, and they're the ones who've taught me. So I don't consider myself to be a great or a very experienced spay fisherman, but I have done it. I do catch fish. And one of the things that I've been taught is the type of water that you really like to fish a spay rod in is the kind of water where there's an even current across the breadth of the river. And that's what you get a lot of in Big River. You have these calm sides where you go wade out. Well, that's why the wading is so easy, because you're not in fast water. And you get closer to the fast water, definitely within a rod's length. And then you can hit the spay cast and you can let it swing. And all the while, there's this uniformity of current that puts the perfect swing on the fish. The old saying with spay fishing, the swing is the thing and the tug is the drug. And it allows you to get a very good swing in the water up there.
Perfect. Okay. So just to recap for anybody that's watching right now, 7, 8, 9 weight rods. You need a fairly decent reel because there are some very large fish in there, and you need a decent drag. Would you not say, Bob? Because it's going to test it.
Absolutely. It should be pretty strong, stronger than I would have thought.
Right. And especially because these are fresh chrome fish right in from the ocean and very aggressive. And I had a bunch that put me right into their backing, especially on the back end of the island there. I remember I hooked into one and it just screamed down the river. It was amazing how fast. And of course I lost it, but that's another story. That's
where I had the 20-pounder, same spot.
Yeah. I've noticed that some of the bigger fish like the one side of the island, but again, you can catch them anywhere. But so what I'd like to do now is I'm going to play a video that's going to talk a bit, and it's in the show. And I haven't mentioned this before, but the show we did with you, Judy, last year, we're going to be premiering it this Saturday. I'm pretty excited about it, and it's kind of trying to tell the story of Big River. But I built the show to be not about my adventure, but to be an educational piece about what to expect when you go to Labrador, what the river's like, what the fishing's like, the equipment, all the things we're talking about here, but put that into a 30, 40-minute video that discusses this all and has all the content to help somebody get educated as to what you need to do when you go to Labrador for the first time. And there's a lot of people who've never been to Labrador and they think they want brook trout, but they didn't realize they can have brook trout and they can have Atlantic salmon at the same time. So I'll put up this video and then we'll talk about it right after. And we're also going to be in this video talking about where the fish hold. And you were just alluding to that, Bob, about where you needed to put the fly to get the fish sometimes. And there's some really good slack water there for throwing bombers, especially if you had a two-handed rod, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. And it also has a little bit about the flies too.
Like all migratory fish coming up rivers, will choose the easiest routes and holding water to minimize their use of energy. Seams, which are the transition between fast and slow water, are the natural highways the salmon will use for the journey upriver. You can see the seam where the foam lines are, but I've also indicated these by red markers. The red lines clearly show where the fish will potentially be and why anglers need to swing their flies through these areas. The riffling hitch is a popular way of getting a wet fly to ride in the surface film, much like a topwater fly as you swing it through the current. Usually the flies are small, sizes 8 to 12, and having them wake across a riffle drives the salmon absolutely crazy, and they will aggressively strike. Here is how to tie the riffling hitch on a wet fly. So Mitch, back on the river, we're in a great run here. And, you know, I've salmon fished a bit, but a lot about salmon fishing, obviously, like all fishing, is presentation. And there's, you know, the basic rule I got taught, 45 degrees to 30 degrees or 30 to 45, but that really depends upon the water speed. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, Colin, that's right. If you've got a really fast current, generally you'll upstream in a little bit, just slow the fly down. If you've got a slow current, sometimes that angle will turn into a 90 even on a slow current.
All the way to 90, right, to get the speed going.
Yes. And sometimes you even have to do a downstream in if it's really slow, like the end of a run sometimes. You got to downstream in a little bit just to speed it up. You don't want that fly ripping along too fast, so steady speed.
Or too slow.
Or too slow.
It sinks below the surface. Yeah. So you want it going across. And then the other thing that I got taught, and I heard you reinforce it the other day, is that, you know, when you're going across and you've got the water that looks promising, that sometimes the best thing is kind of extend your arm out a bit and hold that fly as long as possible, doing its little dance out there on the surface.
Especially in faster water like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a bomber. If I'm on slack water or even dry fly fishing for trout, where you're trying to get the longest drift possible without drag, right? Only here we want the drag, but we want to keep it in the kill zone or where the fish are likely to be, right?
And not want it going too fast or too slow.
Bob, any words of advice beyond what I said there in the video about where the fish are, where you want to put the fly, and of course, the infamous riffline hitch?
Well, of all of the fish that I've gotten in the 2 trips up there, plenty of fish, every single one is on the surface. I have yet to, I do know that every now and then I've had Humphrey and the guy and Mitch mention, if you get a particularly difficult fish that you raise and he won't come back up, take off the riffling hitch, go under the surface. But for the most part, riffle hitch it, let it swing across the surface. And there's a phrase a salmon guy taught me once called salmon speed. And after a little while, you get experienced. And it's a certain speed you want your fly to track at. And it's exactly what Mitch just said, which is not too fast, not too slow. It's salmon speed. It's coming across. And if you're putting it in the right place, which the guide will tell you where to go with it, and if you are doing that cast between 30 and 45 typically, and it swings, the fish will find your fly. You don't have to do that much work. Put it out there, let it swing. The fish will take it from there.
So, Judy, it's been asked again, and it's a good question, though, because every river is different. What is the average size of the salmon that you get on the big river? I know it can probably, as Bob stated earlier, it probably changes through the season, but what's the average size for the salmon on the big river?
It does. But the average size is around 12 pounds, 10 to 12 pounds.
Right. So there's going to be grills, and there'll be periods when they're going to have bigger fish. A lot of the females are coming up in a wave. Then you'll have a wave of the males, and you'll have another bunch of every time. Like Bob, you correct me if I'm wrong. Every time the tide came in, and every day we would get up in the morning, get our coffee, sit on the couch, and Bob and I, as well as others, would be sitting there looking at our phone, going and looking up the tides, because you could set your watch. And I think it was, 3 hours later after the tide change that you could go when the tide reached this peak and it's starting to drop, when the salmon would start hitting in front of the lodge.
Yeah, and also tides run on basically a 25-hour cycle. So if you said to yourself, man, the fishing was lights out at 9 a.m. yesterday, well, then 10 a.m. the next day, they were going to be in there thick as thieves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's you know, I remember going to some of the rivers south of there, and the guides would use these kind of boxes where they'd stick them under the water and they'd look through and there'd be a mirror in there. And we went to so many pools where there wasn't a single fish. And you know, you're paying money and there's not a fish in the pool. You casting practice, and there was never, in 2 years, there was never a 3-hour session. Because you go for 3 hours, then you take a break, then you go for 3 hours. There was never a session where I didn't have action and fish. It never happened.
That's pretty special. And you know, Judy, I think it's important to reinforce what we started this whole thing about, which is that for accessibility, no matter what your mobility, whether you're young or old, this has got to be one of the easiest rivers I have ever gotten around on, waded, fished, anywhere, upriver, downriver, or right in front of the lodge especially. It doesn't get any easier than this. I mean, Bob, you've been to Quebec, you've been to other places.
Mhm.
I've never seen fishing this easy and accessible in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, anywhere. This is it. I mean, you hear the people. I mean, that's when you've got members or people who come to the lodge for 20 plus years.
Mhm. We also have another client that's scheduled to come with us, and from England actually, and hopefully he'll get there this year. And he's actually 89 years old,
Wow.
and he's in fairly good health. But he said, Judy, I'm not as swift as I used to be, and a little bit of mobility issues. But he said, do you think I can manage that river? And, I said, absolutely. And I spoke with the guides as well and explained the situation. And they said, yes, absolutely. It's a prime spot for him to come and fish, and he'll have no issue with it. And of course, our benches out on the island and everything as well, right? That they can have a little rest in between.
Judy, thank you for reminding me. I wanted to put this up because I thought it was the coolest thing. The only river, and maybe Bob, you've seen it in Quebec or somewhere because I can't speak to that, but this is the only river I've ever seen where they put benches on all the pools and runs so that, you need to, and I'm 61, I got to tell you, day 3, and I'm hardcore. I don't mind saying I had to sit down and have a little rest, have a sip of coffee, maybe an energy bar, and had a great, little bit of I wouldn't say a nap, but I just recharged my batteries, and it's pretty cool that you guys have got that, Judy and Bob. You've been around. I mean, wasn't that fantastic for everybody? I even saw you using it, and you're hardcore. You're more hardcore than I am.
Well, you know what? I also use it for my camera equipment, for all of the other stuff that I'm going to bring with me. So I have it set up and ready to go. So I turn around and my buddy's got a fish on, and I can get there and I can get the pictures rather than, risk it to water damage or have to go open the whole thing back up again. So the bench serves for a resting point for us, but also as a place where we can set our day up and use it as a central location. I wanted to mention, Judy, about something that you had said about the gentleman from England. And then we also know my fishing partner, Bob, who's 86 years old. A very important man in my life once said a quote to me that I've never forgotten. He said that there are those who read about history and there are those who write history. And Big River is a place where you can actually go and write history. It's the land before time. It's the world before people industrialized. And I'm not saying industrialization is a bad thing here, but I'm just saying that there's still a part of the world that's so pristine that Atlantic salmon, which require the most pristine waters of any fish out there, can still thrive and can still be there in the numbers that built the legend of the Atlantic salmon. And you can go here and you can write history. And this gentleman who's 93 years old, or Bob who's 86 years old, or 90 years old, or however old these people are, they recognize the greatness of it. And they find a way to keep coming back to it and writing their own story about life. And this is the place to do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a great river. It really is fabulous, and it's got such accessibility. And there's a gentleman who just wrote in the comments here, Eric, I got your words. And Kendall, you need to go fishing with them. As soon as you're back and you're out there on the water, I hope, Kendall, that you'll go out with them, because I wish my wife liked to fish. She doesn't like rain, bugs, no shopping. Anyway, and it's not a criticism. We all have our own thing. But the one I gotta say, that's where my daughter, taking her fishing and having that quality time, it's absolutely fantastic. And Judy, you've seen so many couples come there to the lodge that love fishing. I remember when I left, there's 2 couples that came in right behind me, and they were there, and I don't know if they both fish, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you've got such a great place. They just want to sit out on the porch and read and enjoy good food, a cup of coffee, a drink, while their husband or their wife goes out and fishes, or both of them go out. I mean, there's so much to do there.
Actually, Colin, we had one couple, generally the husband and wife, they both enjoy the fishing, so they go out, and then again, sometimes one will go out in the morning and the other one won't go till the afternoon. But we have one couple year before last, and when they booked, the wife said, no, I won't be going out fishing, maybe once, twice throughout the whole week. And day 2, we couldn't get her off the river. She continued every day. She was hardcore fishing. She caught her first Atlantic salmon, and that was it. She was out there every day and enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, I think this is an appropriate time. We've been all chatting here for an hour. I can't believe how fast the time's gone. But and I want to thank everybody that's making these great comments. And Candace, nice comment about Loman. 53 years on the river and still rocking it. What a guy. I hope I could do something like that in the future and still be rocking. But I think this is a good time. I'm going to show a video that's kind of personifies the fishing that's on Big River. And whether you're a hardcore veteran that salmon fishes or fly fishes all over the world, or you're somebody new to the sport, man or woman, young or old, I mean, this is the place to go. I can put hand on heart and say, for anybody, if you can get to Labrador and come to your place, just like that mother with her son there, adult son, and her young grandson, this is the place to go. I mean, but let's watch the video and let it speak for itself, because I got to tell you, I had such a great time, and this video personifies why I had such a great time and why I want to come back.
It's another beautiful day in Labrador, slightly overcast, which is perfect for salmon migrating upriver. Today we decided to try the runs just in front of the lodge, which are easy to access and also wade. We cast for several minutes without success. Then suddenly a fresh run of salmon arrived, and then it got really exciting for all of us.
There it is. Oh, the power. Oh, there's so many fish in this run today. It's so much fun. We're literally making 3 or 4 casts and having a fish take a swing at our flies. Wow. Oh, all right.
Most anglers see a boulder or a set of rocks in a river and assume that the trout or salmon are lying behind the structure out of the current. What many do not realize is that often fish will hold in front of a boulder in a zone referred to as the hydro cushion or pillow. The current will frequently create a small area where fish can easily hold and continue to hunt for food. Wise anglers understand this and will always swing a fly either on top or below the surface in front of this type of structure.
There's a take. Oh, nice. I think it's trout. Yeah. Awesome.
Some very big fish will take advantage of the hydro cushion to easily hold in fast current. Why do anglers love Atlantic salmon so much? It has much to do with how they fight. They jump, pull line off your reel, and cartwheel through the air. Once an angler has hooked into one of these silver leapers, then they're usually addicted, like I am.
There you go, Judy. The addiction.
Beautiful. Can't wait to get back there.
Colin, that video, I hope people appreciate everything that was there. The hydro cushion is very important, and it's a very great teachable point. But two things. First, where do you see so many salmon sitting in front of a rock? I mean, there was, in one picture, there were upwards of 10 or 12 salmon jammed together in front of a rock. In all of the all rivers south of Labrador, I never saw that number of salmon jammed in one place. And then I know, because I was with you when you made that film, that those salmon were so aggressive that they were taking deer hair mice on the surface.
It's true. Very true. Yeah. And you saw the one, I just put a muddler on with a purple tail, and they were hammering it. So that was the stuff we were seeing. And all the video, for anybody that's watching this, all the video underwater of the trout, of the salmon, that was shot here. That's not from someplace else. It was all at Big River. All the places I've been, I've never seen so many salmon. I've never seen so many trout, all packed into places. And I've got better gear if I ever get a chance to go back, Judy. I'm not saying that out loud, but anyways, if we ever get a chance to come back. But I think this is a good time to bring up a point. Les from Texas says he got a 25-pound salmon on the bank right by the lodge 2 years ago. Great lodge, great guides, great food, off the charts. So what a nice compliment from Les in Texas.
Yeah, I want to say hi to Les. It was great having him there. Hopefully he'll be back again.
Yeah, and everyone else has made comments. And Paula, I really hope you're down there in Maine and you've fished for landlocks in Maine. And just so you know, I fish for landlocks too, and they are a lot of fun. But this will just blow your socks off. It's just phenomenal. These sea run salmon and even the sea run trout. And I don't know if you saw in that one video clip that I got, there's a big stack of salmon, and right below them is a big brook trout. Like that's a 5-6 pound brook trout. Those are 7, 8, 9 pound salmon, and there's this big brook trout. Just like, yeah, I can play with the big grown ups or whatever. But you know, Judy, I think the thing is. This is a good time for us to talk. If people want to get a hold of you, I think you still have some spots for this summer, and you're booking for 2022 right now already. You've already got a lot of bookings for 2022.
And actually, we're booking for 2023 right now as well. Okay, and just I think this is an important thing to know, Bob. There isn't that many places in Labrador or in even Quebec and all these other. There isn't that many salmon rivers that get the numbers of fish that are like this. Anyway,
I've never seen any. The big river that a lot of people talk about in Russia is the Pnoy, and there's more fish in the big river. The catching rates are greater in the big river, and you don't have to go overseas and stuff. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, a few people have asked in here about, whether the border is going to open. I honestly believe the border is going to open. I don't know if it's going to be 1st of July, 15th of July. I think as soon as Canada catches up to the U.S. with their immunizations, we're going to be a much better position. And we already know both federal governments are talking to one another about what the protocols will be to allow Americans to come into Canada. The same way, if I want to go to the States, they're working on those protocols and what they'll be. And I have my fingers crossed it's going to work out for everyone. Which brings up that, Judy, you guys open middle of July, third week of July?
The second week of July.
Right, but your salmon run goes right into September, doesn't it?
It does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, if the border were to open, for the sake of words, the 15th of July, people can still make bookings for August and into early September, right?
Yes, provided we still have the space. Some clients in the U.S., for different reasons, may have to move to 2022. So that's why we're also getting pretty booked up for 2022. So if anybody's interested, they should certainly reach out to us now and secure a spot.
Oh, it's asking if you have a pilot to bring you to the camp or by boat.
We actually, from Goose Bay, you will get a flight from Goose Bay into the camp.
Right, and it's a Twin Otter typically is what you bring in, because the number of guests, you're bringing in supplies, things like that. It's actually a really great flight, and you get to see a lot of Labrador. And Bob, you've done it twice. You know how beautiful it is there, and you really get a sense of the scope of this land, which they call the big land, and how you don't see anything. You don't see any buildings. You don't see any boats. You don't see anything.
Nothing.
This is the real deal. This is the frontier, right?
It's funny. I term it two things. You mentioned being Alaska. Canada's Alaska. Well, two of my nicknames for it are Alaska East, and the other one is the peaks are not as high as Yosemite, but it's the same sort of structures. If you see Ansel Adams' old pictures of Yosemite with like the domes and the bald face, the granite, that's what you're flying over. You're flying over these massive granite mounds and structures that then drop off. And when you're fishing, you're looking at these massive pine trees, and then just as far as you can see, and then this dome of granite coming over it. You're literally sitting in grandeur. And then as you fly in over that, it just prepares you for everything you're about to experience once you settle in and get a chance to fish.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for participating tonight. It was very kind of you to come on as a guest. I asked Judy, I said, who do you think we should, invite to join us? And you got to have Bob. Bob's a teacher, and he was so excited to come here. It was a trip of his lifetime. And the trip of a lifetime became a second one, and it was about to be a third if it hadn't been for COVID last year. But yes. I think, thank you, Bob. You're, I wish we'd met earlier at Somerset or one of these shows. But I look forward to sharing a river with you again, and hopefully it'll be Big River. Yeah. And I appreciate your time and effort helping everybody that's watching this to understand how great the fishing and what a great experience it is to come to Labrador, right, and to Big River.
Absolutely. And to second that, you mentioned your wife's passions. Well, my wife has similar passions, and she hates fishing too. So we'll put the women together.
I know. We got to work that out. And Judy, of course, you said it at the start there. You'd like to be there to welcome the guests and to say goodbye to them and make sure everything's going right. Thank you for all you do. I'm sure Les and all the other people that were in here talking about their experiences at the lodge. As somebody who's been to a lot of places, a well-run lodge does not just happen. All these people, all these things, you can have fabulous fishing and just have the worst experience. You make it happen, and I want to thank you for doing such a great job.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Well,
you've got a wonderful team there.
Well, like I said, I hope I can go there, and I really appreciate you have that no black fly guarantee. I think that's fabulous. It's the only place in Labrador I know that has it. Listen, everybody, if you want to learn more about Big River, watch our premiere this Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll tell you more about Big River, or if you go into our YouTube channel and just go on YouTube and type Big River, you'll see some of the previous shows. We've been there 3 times now with the show, and I'm excited. In fact, I'm fighting Mark because Mark wants to go there, but I'm like, no, dude, this is a place that I don't think you'd like. So unfortunately, he's watching this right now, and he's rubbing his hands together going, no, Colin, nice try. I saw enough. I want to go. But anyways, everyone, let's hope the border opens soon. Stay safe. And I hope to see you on the water soon. Thank you both, Judy and Bob. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Colin. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
guys.
Yep. See you later, guys.
Bye. Have a great
Bye-bye.
evening.